Let's begin. Our school leadership team is a group, as you know, and we have two main charged functions, and that's to sort of work on the CEP for our school, the Comprehensive Education Plan, to put together goals and an action plan to meet those goals. Mrs. Siddiqui has been our expert in compiling the CEP, but she certainly doesn't have a monopoly on it. So anyone who's interested in working with her on putting that together, certainly we encourage your help and your assistance with that. Yes, Mrs. McDonald.
Yes, I'm just curious. I remember seeing that the CEP last year and going over it and discussing it in the SLT. Is there an expectation from the DOE that the CEP will take into account remote and hybrid learning?
Yeah, and we'll certainly do that. Yeah, and it's certainly going to impact our goals and sort of what path we're going to take and how we're going to get there. So yeah, for sure.
Okay. And it's, if I'm remembering correctly, it's just for this academic year.
The CEP is for each year, right?
So
yes. Year. A lot of the goals flow from one year to the next because there's a longer horizon for achieving some of these things. But we do have annual goals that are set up, and we're pretty good at making them and achieving them.
They're pretty much set up as a drop-down menu now. They kind of changed the process due to the COVID restrictions for schools and things. So we have a drop-down menu. We have to choose one in ELA, with one in ELA, one in math, one specifically for IEP students, and one dedicated to the school survey. The math and ELA ones, we're told that we have to also look at our most struggling students for that goal. And then, but we made two different goals, and we're thinking that for math, it would be for the Algebra for All, since that's a new push that we're doing for school. And it's pretty much students with disabilities have the focus for most of the CEP, because that's what we're told to do.
And related to that is the other function of our group, the technical function, which is our budget, our school budget, and making sure that that budget is in alignment with the goals in the CEP. As I've mentioned, from the get-go, and certainly at our parent meetings, the role of our SLT here certainly transcends those two things. And I want you to feel free to bring things up that may not have anything to do with our budget or our CEP. And we talk about things that are important for our school community, whatever category they might fall under. So I think it's important to frame, especially for our new members, really kind of what we're all about. And that's providing the best education that we can to our students, whether it's, in school normally or our after school programs, and what kinds of things within our power, of course, which is often kind of limited, but within our power, what can we do to improve the kinds of things that we're being asked to do? So those are some pretty exciting things going on. I did mention earlier that I may have to cut short a little bit my time at our meeting today. It does look like I'll have to do that, but I do have a little bit of time. I did want to sort of have an opportunity, though, to share some things before that happens. So if I may, and Mr. File, I know if you want to share, or Ms. Wong, if you want to share the agenda for today, and just to sort of see where we're at and sort of keep us on track a little bit.
Yeah. Are you, Mr. Berman, do you want to talk about other things off the agenda and then go back, or start with the agenda?
Let's start with the agenda items. And okay. I do, since I mentioned the budget, I do want to start with that. I did not prepare, documents to send to you, but Ms. Wong will remind me tomorrow to prepare some of our budget documents that I'll email to you, that you can take a look at. And I will plan perhaps our December meeting to go into some detail about our budget, in particular as a refresher for our continuing members, and maybe even a refresher for some of our new members, because you may be very familiar with those things already. But suffice it to say that our budget is in great shape this year. Right now, we still have about $500,000, and we need to think about how to spend that money very, very wisely, because we're not going to have that kind of money next year. I don't see that happening at all. We can't carry the money over. We just have to spend it now. And I would suggest spending it sooner rather than later, because as things sort of seem to be going down a path that will lead to more school closures and closures in general, that makes it much more difficult to purchase things and get orders and things like that. So we've been asking our teachers and our staff, and we've been buying some things that our teachers need, but we do have that, and I did want to share that. One of the things that I think it's important that we do is look carefully. Before the pandemic really came to a head in March, we were in the process of hiring an additional assistant principal. And that's something that I want to certainly work on this year to start to make happen. And so I want to just sort of put that out there. We do have the funds and the need for it. In terms of items and things for our school, we're really just incredibly well stocked with PPE supplies and things like that. The city has supplied all of those things. The PTA was gracious enough to take care of the thermometers that we have on the wall, which really facilitates entry, and that's been great. So yeah, so we could certainly go to the agenda items at this point. You want to put them on the screen? Let me see if I can pull mine up. There we go.
I just wanted to maybe talk about the meeting days for the future so that we can agree on if it works for everyone. I know in previous years, we just had to make sure it was set, like the set dates, and then.
Well, okay, sure, we can do that. So normally we have our meetings on the second Thursday?
The third.
The third.
It was the third Thursday, unless.
Change that. So let's change. Let's
Okay.
change that. I want to say, how about the third Tuesday? Does that work?
Third Tuesday. That would be third Tuesday.
That's when the PTO meeting is, if I may request the second Tuesday?
Sure. How about the second Tuesday then
Second Tuesday.
of each month?
And then a week later, we'll have the PTO meeting. So anything that comes up, we can.
That works.
12, 8.
There may be things that come up during the year that force us to change the meeting and dates for whatever it might be, and we'll certainly try to avoid that. And
Yeah.
you know,
If it happens to be like spring break or midwinter break, or like no school for whatever reason, I'll make sure
okay, great.
we kind of move it to another date.
Talking about feedback, I guess those are some of the, and if that date is a problem, please just send an email and take a look at your calendars, and we can always modify that. We just kind of pick that date. But talking about feedback, I would love to hear some feedback from our families, but I do want to share just a little bit of feedback, and maybe Ms. Siddiqui, you can help a little bit with that, because I know Mrs. Siddiqui had a meeting with her 6th grade teachers this morning. And I know Miss Mack was there, and, you know, we talked about some things that, that were concerning for us, that we're kind of seeing a little bit. And I know Mrs. Siddiqui is going to meet with the 6th grade families before parent-teacher conferences. I do want to talk a little bit about parent-teacher conferences. I'll do that. But the feedback in general tends to be very positive. But there are specific things that we're seeing going on with the children in terms of kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, trying to get away with kinds of things that perhaps they shouldn't, being more forgetful perhaps than they should be in terms of turning in assignments and you know, turning in blank pages. Oops, I forgot this, that, things like that, that I know that we're going to ask parents for a little bit more help on. I know we're preaching to the choir here, but these are just some of the things in terms of feedback that that we were getting from some of the teachers that we wanted to address with some of the parents moving forward. I'd love to hear some feedback from our parents about how things are going. Yeah, sure, Mrs. McDonald.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. So hi, thank you. I was just remembering what it was like to be the parent of a 6th grader and how what an intense learning curve it is to just really get organized and be on top of the assignments and everything. And it was such great preparation for 7th and 8th grade. And I know it will be great preparation for high school. I could see though how it would be difficult to do that in the remote environment. So that's great that the teachers and Ms. Siddiqui are on top of it and going to work with the families and the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I have just tried to have some conversations with parents. This is 8th grade parents, so I'm speaking to that experience. I'm sure it might be different in other grades. One concern that I heard from several parents, just concern, question, just wondering about the oracy curriculum. I know that that was a big thing last year and the year before to develop the oracy component, and there doesn't seem to be much of that so far this year. So was just wondering if that's one of those things that we'll eventually get to, or if just not going to be able to this year with the way.
Yeah, well, it's certainly taken a back seat to what's been going
Yes.
on. It's certainly not been a priority. Those skills are certainly very, very important, and they are things that we'll get back to. For a lot of kids, we're just getting them to turn their camera on, you know, and there's a whole gamut here in between. So, you know, oracy works very well face to face. It's very hard to do remotely, although again, those skills transcend the medium, you know, the idea of communicating and connecting with people. And teaching children how to operate in this world. I mean, obviously it's become more important than ever. That said, our teachers are also learning to navigate this world and how to communicate. And so while our teachers may have had an advantage with oracy in person, they very well may not be at an advantage. And some of them, in fact, are at an extreme disadvantage with this new kind of oracy. So yeah, oracy is important. It hasn't disappeared, but there are definitely other priorities.
I think that also, you know, even with the kids who are here, I mean, I'm in the building, and it's when you walk into a classroom, it's eerie. The kids are quiet. They're wearing their masks. You know, they're sitting 6 feet apart. You know, even though we're trying very much to make it a welcoming environment and do activities with them, there is a really big level of discomfort in the school building. And I have to be honest with you about that. And as well as the kids who are at home, I know the teachers are learning to do Nearpod and things like that, to have them do presentations that they may not be willing to have a discussion within the group, or they go automatically to the chat instead of speaking, you know, to the entire class. I think that doing activities and doing presentations and or doing videos will help them communicate. But right now they're still in that very awkward fear stage of having enough confidence to be there, either remotely or blended. It's just, I think, a very difficult situation all around. And the teachers have expressed that they do want to have a really great discussion. And they look sad. And I think Mr. File, we're planning some different activities, both remotely and in school, to get them to smile. You know,
Yeah.
to get them to laugh, right?
Yeah,
And
following up with what Ms. Siddiqui said, it could be a little depressing being in the building because we're used to so much energy and kids running around, and you go there and they're in the same room and they're spread out and they have the masks. They're very, very, very quiet. So, you know, like Ms. Siddiqui said, we're really trying to build some energy into the building and just hopefully get people a little happier for the ones that are coming here. And for the all remote students, which is, I don't know, close to 80% of the building, same thing. A lot of teachers speak to me and they say their frustration is, are the kids enjoying it the way they have in the past? I don't feel the same energy. Some of the kids who were really good in person are struggling. So I think there is, I don't want to call it like a learning curve, because I think we did learn a lot between March and now, and we're probably further along than most of the schools, or almost all the schools that I hear about. But I think there's a comfort curve. Like, this is not really a natural way to learn and a natural way to be. And just as people get more used to it, they're also burning out. They're tiring of this. So like, I'm used to living this way, but I don't want to live this way. So I think we're seeing a lot of ups and downs, and we're trying real hard though. We're trying to really keep the education going and make sure that, you know, the SEL piece is something we're paying really, really close attention to. And, you know.
Oh, yeah. So, and I'm going to need to jump off. It's coming up on 3:30. And again, I do apologize for that. But, you know, the feedback that we have been getting has been helpful, and we have been adapting to that and really trying to create the programs and the plans that are going to, you know, address these needs. I think identifying the problems like we've been doing and just creating joy in the school and at home is a really difficult thing to do. So anything any ideas that you have, things that we can do in a safe manner, we have the money to do it, and you know, and we have the people to do it.
I mean, even the other day, we had some sixth graders reading scary stories, you know, and there were 40 sixth graders reading stories aloud and everybody cheering them on. It was the first sense of real school that I think I've had since March, you know, having kids give feedback, and they made empanadas the other day online with Mr. Chechi, you know, just trying to do some of those activities. We need to do more. We need to.
One of them, which we hope to have scheduled tomorrow, which is up in the air, and then I'll just get to you real quick, Mrs. McDonald. I saw you there. Mark Cuban is scheduled to meet with some children and Mr. Chechi tomorrow. It's kind of up in the air because the assistant hasn't gotten back to the last email, but we're hoping that it happens, and we're really excited for that, and I know the kids are too.
That was a student who started back in the summer, Luai, who kept on emailing Mark Cuban, and he emailed back going, sure, I would come.
Yep. And we'll record it too, so you'll get to see it also as long as it happens. Mrs. McDonald, real quick, and then I've got a jet.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I just want to just say the comments that I heard about ORC, it wasn't so much of like, where's the ORC curriculum, but mostly remote parents noticing exactly what you're talking about, Ms. Siddiqui and Mr. File, of just sort of the lack of energy and engagement in the classes. So I love hearing about that, the kids reading aloud the scary stories and having the opportunity to cheer them on. Like more of that kind of thing across all the grades, I think would make such a big difference for the kids in terms of, and I'm sure it's connected too to the motivation issue that you mentioned with the sixth graders. And that I'm sure is probably in all the grades as well. But yeah, just more opportunities for discussion and to, because I mean, this environment is so unnatural, but opportunities to engage the
Yeah.
kids and get them participating.
And you know what? And
I
some
love
of
that
the
you brought
teachers,
up- I love that you brought up oracy. I really do. I'm not offended in any way, and I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that that what we brought really meant something, and that it's something that's still resonating. And to me, that's really important to know, and moving forward. And it is certainly something that I've thought about since the spring, and how to bring that back in certain ways. And hopefully the springtime will be a way for us to do that, whether we're continuing remotely or whether we're back in school. I want to thank you all. I know your meeting's going to continue. I'm going to leave you with Mrs. Siddiqui, you are in, and Mr. File. You're in wonderful, wonderful hands. Winnie will keep them all in line. Thank you very much, Winnie. And I wish you all a great
Thank
day.
you, Mr. Berman.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
bye. Yeah, so just building a little bit, if, some of the teachers have said it's, especially with the sixth graders, it's very challenging to really get to know the kids on a more personal level, and like get a feel for them beyond, what their grades are. So I think those are tremendous challenges. And if you hear of stuff going on in other schools or other states or other countries that you think is really cool, we're happy to try it. So, let's see, I'm just going to check the agenda here. You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
We're losing energy like a regular class. Who are you guys? Well, I don't know anyone.
Turn on your mic.
I'm gonna start making people talk. That's it. I'm glad to see Amy. I'm glad you've joined. You're out. You're back.
Call on the people whose videos are not on.
Yes,
That's who
very,
you
very
call.
angry at that. So on the agenda, we had in-person school and remote learning. Those were two of the things, and I know that we've sort of touched on it. But again, the dynamic and the feedback that you're getting from other parents and kids would be very helpful, and how they're feeling and what we could maybe do. We're always looking for that. We're looking for that next idea and that next thought. And are we missing some big, great way to do this? I'm not getting that from the meetings I go to, the union meetings. I'm hearing a lot of the same things, and actually I leave there feeling pretty good about what we're doing. But
I mean, I think we're doing a great job. I think we could do much more. I think my repertoire of questions I ask children when they're struggling has definitely changed. I want to know, what was remote with sixth graders? What was remote learning like? Who's home with you? What time did you go to bed? How often do you stay on looking on the screen? Do your eyes hurt? When's the last time you stretched? Did you get a chance to get up? Did you eat? These are all the things that, I've started to ask to get the understanding of this new normal is not great, and what is the concern that we can kind of help you with to make you successful, right? But I think also staying routine oriented, firm, somewhat, being somewhat firm, but also understanding is the way to go, that we can, to kind of create as much structure as possible for all of the grades and consistency from all of the grades. I know the first marking period is coming to an end, and our report cards will be given with parent-teacher conferences. I know the teachers are trying to reach out as much as possible. I feel for parents who have a sixth grader and a seventh grader and an eighth grader who are not home, and trying to keep those children focused independently is a really difficult thing. They drift off very easily. They're playing, go on to a game instead of going on to the class, remembering the periods and things. I think it's all a big challenge that, the teachers are being understanding, but we also have to be consistent. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now.
yep. So, more of the same. SEL is on the list. Yes, Kathy.
Glad you brought up SEL because I was thinking about that when you said looking for any suggestions and so forth. And I don't know what, everybody has SEL in some form or another this year, right? All the grades. Yeah, so the parents that I've spoken to, and so it may be different depending on who's teaching and what the grades are, but for the parents I've spoken to, and then in my son's 8th grade class as well, the SEL is not live.
Okay.
Assignments to complete and so forth. And I understand there are scheduling issues and so forth, but I was just sort of contrasting it to, I have a nephew who's in 7th grade in North Carolina, and their school also has an SEL curriculum. I think that's very big this year in schools around the country. And he said, SEL is the best part of my day. And he said, it's the only chance we get to talk and engage with the other kids in the class and the teacher. And so I was trying to ask him about what it was like. And he said, well, the teacher would just give a topic. He said, we're not allowed to talk about politics, but like a current event.
Well, why not? I'm just kidding.
This is North Carolina. I'm in Charlotte. I'm sure it's very controversial, but anyways, and then they would just talk and chat, and that seemed like a great, again, I know it's hard to schedule, and teachers are being pulled in different directions. And
let me ask you, could we steal that? Could you get more specific information?
I can, yeah. I mean, my sister-in-law works with he's the PTO rep who works specifically with teachers on helping them with classroom stuff. So I can ask her if she has the curriculum.
Yeah.
I can send it to you, Mr. File and Ms. Siddiqui, but
that would be great.
That sort of thing, like maybe using that class to, I don't know, like have debates or student, like project-based learning where they do presentations or, that kind of thing in a less, I don't know, high stakes as say algebra class, right? This might be a way to bring back some of that joy. So yeah, I'll see what I can.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And also when I think of SEL, it's also the teachers going out of their way to try to just be just a little bit more flexible, a little bit more understanding than during a normal year, because there's always this push and pull I guess, with flexibility and understanding and accountability, and not letting the kids feel like you're always flexible, because sometimes in life there has to be a deadline and things like that. But just realizing that there's a lot of people doing in a lot of different circumstances going through stuff. So bringing SEL into like a sort of a centerpiece of how everyone works with each other, with extra understanding. And, even in some of the groups, some of the group work, I think some of the kids have trouble with that, doing collaborative learning in this environment. So, anything like that's great from North Carolina. I'd love to see how they're doing that. I would enjoy classes like that as well. So
yeah, I'll see what I can get and I'll send it to you.
That would be great. We're trying to move a little quicker than usual. I got stuck in about 2.5 hours of traffic this morning. So it basically ruined my whole day. I've been like, in a messed up mood. But so the last thing I put on was just something that I called respectful disagreement. And that doesn't have to do with us, okay? And there was a student in our school who did get into a political debate discussion with some kids from another borough. And, then they proceeded to, tear her apart with saying horrible, wildly inappropriate things. And it was a Catholic school. That principal was fantastic. She dealt with it. But her and I ended up having a really, really good conversation. And I was very impressed with her as a school leader. And we were both talking about how in the country today, people don't talk to each other respectfully. When in many cases, when you disagree with someone, it turns into name calling and labeling. And if I was thinking it would be really great if we could stress that at a young age. How do you communicate with someone you disagree with, whether it's politics or anything else, and hear their point of view and try to understand it and be willing to agree to disagree in a civilized way? I just see it as it's such a problem in the country. And when is the education system going to address it in sort of a broader way? You know, I know that there's people talking about changing curriculum to recognize the plight of, you know, Blacks in this country and things like that. But, and, you know, again, open for discussion about anything. But I think the bigger problem is people don't respect one another. And people talk, they don't listen to what the other person is saying. So I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on how we might address that, because one of the kids, two of the kids involved with that were speaking to me about that. It's not necessarily, I saw you wrote conflict resolution. It's not necessarily conflict in a way, it's sort of an everyday thing, just understanding, hey, you know, I don't agree with you, but we're still friends. We're not, you know, I don't think you're a horrible person. I don't think you're a racist or a homophobic person or anything like that. So I don't know how we could get to the point where we could talk about some hot topics in middle school in a factual way where we could disagree with each other in a civilized way. And that could maybe slowly build toward adults doing that. Like our generation is sort of, we're done, you know, but kids, this generation might be better. So that was just a thought that I was having since this happened to this one student. And, you know, Mina knows it was pretty eye-opening, and she was certainly affected by it.
Definitely.
And it started out with a political discussion that maybe she didn't approach perfectly. And then she got, you know, destroyed by these kids. And it just seems so symbolic of what's going on in the country. And maybe we could figure out a way to also throw that in. It's sort of an SEL-ish type of thought as well.
In sixth grade, like the sixth grade classes that Mr. Shiner and I teach together, we actually did like a friendly like debate about a topic. It had, you know, something to do with whether or not it was considered like racist or segregating to have like a Oriental aisle in a supermarket. And, you know, we prefaced it with letting students know, you know, it's okay to have your opinion on whether you feel like it is, you know, considered a bad thing to have that separate aisle and it's considered separation and not being inclusive, or whether it's not. So the students did have, you know, kind of a debate about it, and they read an article, 2 articles actually, and then they got a chance to express, you know, their opinion on it, and using, you know, facts or even their own opinion from after reading the articles to defend their point without having to call each other names or saying, hey, you're racist, or what you're saying is wrong and I don't like what you said about it. And I think what you said, you know, I don't agree with what you say. But the students did a great job. There was it wasn't heated in the sense that some people might have, you know, like, you know, real hard on like political debates or anything like that. But I think it is a good chance for the students to have that experience of, you know, letting others know their opinion and what they think, and also accepting what others have to say and think, and even if it was not agreeing with them.
Yeah.
And Mr. File was supposed to be in that class, but he missed it that day.
Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't make it. But yeah, I mean, just the idea that is a big problem we're having right now. Problem with what's factual information, what's not factual information. Do we respect one another? Do we believe one another? Are we listening? Could we come to an agreement on what's factual and what's not factual? I struggle with it with some of my friends. We have some of these text debates, and I start losing my mind, and maybe they feel the same way. So, you know, perhaps like a listening exercise, or I don't know, I'm going to look into it a little bit, but I do think it's sort of like an elephant in the room problem in our country. And what better way to deal with a problem in our country than to start in middle school and try to work on it.
Well, I think that goes back to what Kathy, Ms. McDonald was saying, was about, you know, just having them discuss in class, and it goes back to, you know, having a rich discussion.
Yep.
Right? Understanding others' perspective. That's all part of that, our ORC initiative. Understanding and respecting others' position. You know, how you speak to one another, how clear you are, listening to one another, listening and understanding before you make an argument. So I think it goes all back to that. And I think, we have to come up with some more solutions to get the kids comfortable in speaking. I think no matter what class we have, if they're not comfortable in speaking, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not really the curriculum. Yes, the curriculum is there, but it's more of how can we get the students comfortable with, in this situation, speaking and expressing themselves. I think that right now is the biggest challenge. They're hiding behind their cameras. They're hiding behind the screen. They're only chatting and they're only talking in the chat, many of them. So that is the whole sphere of what we need to change, is dealing with how to engage them and their comfort level in speaking online right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could get them to have that discussion in law class, Jeff. I mean, it could happen.
Yeah.
You can have it in ELA class. You can have that debate in, in phys ed and math and whatever. But if they're not comfortable in this digital situation, we're not going to be able to get them to speak.
No, of course. That's sort of the bread and butter. Like,
We have to figure out a way to get them comfortable.
Yep. Yes, Hani.
Okay, yes, I have some also after listening to Ms. Sadika said, yeah, I agree with a lot of it's come to my mind, like why some teacher, they should start some like maybe simple topic discussion in either class, like the social, as what class I call the name, and also the social study, like also the emotion, that I forgot the class name, so they can like brainstorm some some ideas from the kids, like how do you think, like or the teacher can start some some like basic rule, like when they just go to a new school, they have some rules. The teacher maybe talk about what he think about the the rules, like when they discuss, like sometimes you don't even your friends, you may have different opinions, and sometimes even at a dinner table, you don't want to bring very very controversial things. If you are playing with your friends games, why don't you don't use those political things to attack each other? If they heard some vocabulary or things. Right, so the teacher can give a guide, topics, and then like the kids talk, like try to talk about some of their opinions. When some I'm sure they heard something about some at home, and at the news, so they do have something. So if the teacher have some guidelines, and also the teacher, I heard like you don't need to have agreement. Even the friends, you don't need to have agreement with political, but you don't need to hurt each other's feelings. By you want to try to persuade other people. So some kind of this things they can have maybe a diagram or a brainstorm topic. Maybe we should insert something like this to classes.
I mean, even think, we have how many people here, 13 people, and think of this now with a class of 33. How many people have their camera off? We cannot gauge your face to see whether or not you want to speak. We don't know if, what is your body language telling us to how you want to participate, right? That is like one of the biggest struggles is, as a classroom teacher, and I think Heather and Winnie and Amy and everybody who are here who are teachers, looking at 33 kids and maybe 10 of them have their camera on, to really be able to engage them is difficult, because they're seeing that chatting in the window is communicating, and it's not. So, I think putting yourself in that teacher's perspective right now, and maybe Tina, maybe, or Joycey or Heather, you guys can, talk about that. How hard it is when, maybe not you, Tina.
I am constantly.
Stay quiet. Maybe.
I don't know what's wrong with Tina's
you need
mic.
Quiet, but maybe you can give us the perspective on how you've engaged and what kind of struggles you have, because that is the key. I mean, to
Wow.
keep those cameras on, to get them comfortable with interrupting with each other and talking with some protocols, instead of relying on the chat and saying, I'm finished talking so I can turn off my camera.
I am constantly repeating myself that they have to keep their cameras on. I don't allow them to type in the chat. And the biggest problem is when they break out into breakout rooms, they think that they don't have to talk to each other in the breakout rooms, that they can type in the chat and keep the camera off. That is my biggest struggle this remote learning year. So I'm randomly calling on students just so they are on their toes and that they know that I'm going to call them at any second and they have to be able to answer. So that's my struggle. And I know it's every single teacher's struggle because it's very hard to get the kids motivated and wanting to discuss and getting these, these wonderful discussions that we used to have in class when we were all there. It's so hard to get that started right now.
Yeah.
Tina, on the chat for Zoom, you can turn off the chat so they have to be speaking with each other.
Yes, I realized that a little later.
But then when you turn that off, then some of them don't engage at all.
Exactly. Exactly.
I had a breakout room with 5 other students today doing math, and I was basically talking to myself. They didn't have their cameras on, or one student did, but then they weren't replying. So I'm like, hey, Edward, reply to me.
Lots of coaxing going on.
A lot of me just kind of saying, hey, you, because they're just not.
And
or also
eventually we'll
because
just have to,
sometimes
like,
if they're just also because sometimes they're also, if they're using an iPad, if they're on, like if we're working on a document and then I have them like, okay, can you share or can you speak? Then their camera turns off, because once you're off of the Zoom app, their camera automatically turns off on a iPad device, which, okay, I understand, that circumstance, but then they should still be turning on their mic to speak, and that should not be.
But do you find that they're using that excuse quite often, that they're on a Mac, an iPad? Sorry.
I know that there's usually just a handful. Like I know who the iPad kids are already.
Yeah, and it's a big problem because then they don't have their cameras on. You don't know what app they're going on. They say they're listening, but they're not paying attention. You call their name, they're like, oh, what? Sorry, didn't hear you. But during their break time that I give them, they're doing just fine, talking to each other, getting codes for the game rooms to join in. But once we're doing work, then they have problems listening and hearing, and I have no idea. And eventually, you get to the point where, okay, I can't focus on you 3 anymore. I need to start teaching my 5 or 10 other kids that are ready to learn, so that's a little bit of a problem there that I have.
So this is chiming in on this discussion. So I'm a department chair at City College, and our teachers are dealing with all of these same issues. And I've been trying to hold every few weeks just kind of drop-in session where people can come and ask questions and share best practices. And a couple weeks ago, somebody was talking about how she felt like she had finally kind of gotten it right with doing Zoom, the breakout rooms on Zoom. And so I asked her to share what she did. And one of the things that she did was, and I feel like this has happened even I've heard of this happening in classrooms at McCullough in the past when we were face-to-face, but like assigning the students roles. So somebody has to be the note taker, somebody has to be the facilitator, somebody has to be the person who reports back. And those have to rotate every time you do the group work, so that not just that they have a specific focus of the topic they're supposed to be talking about, but everybody, the facilitator, that person can't do it through the chat. They have to be speaking. The note taker has to be responsible for making sure that there's a record, and then somebody has to report back at the end. And if that's rotating, then that just kind of gives them practice in speaking, because speaking in this environment is so bizarre. And I was reading an article a week or 2 ago about precisely about camera use and Zoom exhaustion. And the Zoom exhaustion isn't just from staring at the computer screen all day, but because you can't read body language in the same way, your mind is working so hard to figure out, like, what is she thinking? What is she thinking? What is he thinking? And so it's just this whole level of mental exertion that's going on kind of under the surface.
We are seeing, you know, in terms of guidance, student anxiety on the rise.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that that we are definitely seeing. Students who are having difficulties expressing themselves, or nervousness is definitely on an increase. You know, usually by now, you know, we're very good at catching any type of suicidal ideation very quickly. Thankfully, that we're very good at being able to do that because of the relationships we have with children. And I know that we're very afraid that we won't be able to catch it right now because it's getting harder for the kids to be able to communicate with us and be comfortable communicating with us. So I definitely agree that, you know, specifying group roles and things like that absolutely will help in a variety of ways. And it's just, even in school, they're just so afraid and quiet. I'm hoping that when we do get some sense of normalcy, I don't know with the lasting effect. The teachers will be having a trauma-informed training tomorrow that Mr. Kaplan, our theater teacher, has been trained, going into a series of events that the teachers will have a few professional developments to talk about how the pandemic has created a trauma-like atmosphere, to where we'll be able to kind of gear our lessons more towards assisting children to get through this time. So I'm excited for tomorrow to be able to listen to what he was able to do and then be able to talk to my grade as well as my departments about how we can incorporate some of the activities that I know Mr. Kaplan will be sharing with us. You know, yes, the kids, you know, have been affected tremendously. We see it, we hear it, they write about it, they talk about it, especially for children who may be in an apartment, who may not be leaving as much as possible, who may not play a sport, who may not go out, who maybe are isolated themselves with friendships. It definitely is a situation that we have to deal with, and hopefully with the training the teachers will begin tomorrow, that will help us. So we're thankful that the teachers will have the trauma training starting tomorrow.
All right. And are there any questions? I think we're up to the Q&A part of the meeting. Winnie, any questions?
I'm okay for now.
Any parents, any questions? So feel free to reach out with suggestions.
Does Vito have any PTO updates? I know John's not here.
Oh, wait a minute. NIA, I forgot about that. John didn't get
Did John tell you anything?
He did text me
Anything
something.
new?
He was having trouble getting into the meeting.
Sure.
So he said we're working on a Zoom school play.
Have a test in algebra. Yeah, I couldn't get in. Sure.
Yeah. So we're working on a Zoom school play, and students have been coming in different afternoons to pick up supplies for some of the classes. So NIA is we're still keeping it going in a remote way, and you know, there's still interest. We're really excited about that. I think once we open the real NIA at some point, maybe September, I think there'll be a lot of pent-up enthusiasm for it. So,
can I ask a question?
Sure, Effie.
This is going to be sort of, I don't even know if I'm going to frame it correctly. This is sort of a broader philosophical question about parent-teacher conferences in the age of in the age of virtuality. I remember when my kids were in elementary school, parent-teacher conferences are really important, and you showed up and you talked to all their teachers, and it was like a really great opportunity to meet the teachers. And then it becomes a little bit more, you know, difficult when they get into higher grades. But I'm sort of wondering, because I mean, I have 3 kids in 3 different schools, and I'm getting 55 emails a day about, you know, from every single freaking teacher, because we've been required to contact you about if you want, and some are using forms and some are not using forms. And I'm not saying that this is specifically McAuliffe. I'm just wondering if, I mean, parents can reach out to teachers at any time via email anyway. And I'm just really curious about the messaging that I've been getting. Because like on one hand, it's, well, we are holding these parent-teacher conferences because we have to during these specified times. but yet we really don't want to talk to you on the phone. We'd really prefer to talk to you by email. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm
wondering. You at all?
We don't want, actually, really, we don't want to talk to you all. That's the, yeah, I mean, that's the underlying message. But I mean, I guess I'm just wondering what sort of messaging you're getting from the DOE about, like, are you required to do this? Like, I don't know. I'm just sort of confused about the point of parent-teacher conferences in a time when we can't actually see parents in person anyway. That's what I'm sort of, or I'm sorry, I meant teachers in person anyway. That's what I'm wondering about.
Well, I think we are required to do it. And
yeah.
I do think it is very, very challenging. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference ever with my kids. Now I have a daughter in 9th grade, and I got wrapped up in some stuff and I sort of forgot about it. And one of the main reasons is I like showing up and walking around and going on the computer and making these appointments. And it just had that extra step that I knew how my daughter was doing. And now I feel bad and I'm going to call the teachers. But it's definitely not the same. And, you know,
People understand that it is a contractual obligation that we have to be available during that time, that the DOE is having us set that mandate. You know, we did send out a survey to just gauge how many families actually wanted to speak to the teachers, so that we can effectively then plan for that. I mean, the teachers have over 96, 100 families that have responded saying, I want to speak to you. And it's usually mostly 6th grade, right? 6th grade and 7th grade, 8th grade, not so much. But we do have, you know, and then trying to effectively plan for 100 families being contacted via Zoom, email, phone, translation required or not, has been a huge, huge problem for us. One teacher could have 40 families that require translation. And how is that able to happen? How we have limited staff. We do have the translation unit. That is also a cumbersome thing to be able to kind of organize with that. So our plan right now is for to kind of separate and divide. The teachers will provide a summary for their most struggling students that will have the translators be able to relay during the day. And then the teachers will be able to be open for additional phone calls that do not require translation for discussions with the families. So we're trying to make it that way. So instead of having one translator bump around to 3 different teachers and try to do that, which is impossible and or difficult to have, one translator will make one phone call and give a summary for all of the subjects. And if additional information and or meeting is required, then the teacher can set up an independent meeting. So that's kind of what we've decided to do based upon the feedback of the survey that we're getting, because it was impossible to schedule, you know, 20 to 50 conversations that are happening with our translators when we only have 6 people on staff that will speak, that can speak Cantonese or Mandarin. I don't know if that answered anything.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, and I mean, I get it. I mean, I don't get it, obviously. I mean, it's a huge logistical nightmare, but I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, as I said, it was sort of a larger philosophical question. I didn't really actually expect you to give me any answers. It's more just about, I don't know, going forward, what it means to have parent-teacher conferences when it's not in person and when parents can email teachers at any time anyway. I guess
I'm not attending my daughter's parent-teacher conferences, and I do feel guilty, but at the same time, I really don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, teachers have been reaching out. Teachers have been reaching out to parents already, like ones that really are struggling. Like this is not the first time that they're going to be talking to the parents anyways. Like they've been, you know, we've been calling, you know, throughout the weeks, and we have our office hours that we, you know, speak with parents or email them. So they are aware, especially for the ones that have been struggling already. You know, they're not just starting to you know, see that struggle.
Biggest response. The 6th grade has.
Yeah.
But I do agree that it's not optimal. And like I said, I mean, I have parent-teacher conferences tonight for my 6th grade daughter. And normally I'm actually looking forward to it. You know, I usually get pretty good reports. I'm meeting these people I've heard about all the time. And now I'm like, not really looking forward to it. I think it's by phone and I don't know, it's just not the same. So Hopefully in September, we'll be 100% back to normal. That is the good news, you know, with the vaccine. And, you know, I heard Dr. Fauci say that he thinks by sometime in May, everybody should or could potentially have gotten the vaccine who wants to. And if it worked, that would be a solution. And then we could look forward to next year. Yes.
Do you think they'll start requiring the COVID vaccine like they do the MMR and all those other vaccinations for kids?
I'll be honest, I'm in favor of that. Like I told you last time, I was in favor of requiring it to come to school. I couldn't believe the parents have to opt in. You're in school. You know, so I'm in favor of it. I don't know if they will. I'm sure that'll be a controversial topic and debate and discussion.
In Massachusetts, they're requiring teachers and students to get the flu shot this year.
I'm not opposed to that either.
I mean, yeah, I agree.
You know, public health, you know, if you don't believe in it, but that's going to put other people at risk.
We did have our COVID testing again. This is the third time that we've had COVID testing in the building. And I think at least, again, 30 staff members at least went down.
Yeah.
And we tested 15 students. There were a few students that were getting upset, so we sent them back to class and we didn't test them. So if a student is showing any sign of anxiety or being upset, we're not testing them.
Good, thank you.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I didn't even know that. So if they're not tested, are they tested next time? Is that something that we'll
see if it's a day that they randomly come back again. So pretty much where most schools have a certain day, which doesn't make sense because they're always seeing the same kids.
Yeah.
We have a certain day, but we have a cycle day. So each time that they've come, they've been able to see a different cohort. So it's always a different group of students.
Right. And to tell you the truth, I even had mixed feelings about if the child's upset, then we don't test them, we send them back. I mean, the goal of the test is to find out if someone has it so it doesn't spread around. You know, so they're upset, they go back to class, and then we don't know who has it. It sort of ruins the concept of what we're doing.
Not testing a child with their parent not being with their
No, I know. I understand both sides of it, but I do think that it's something for the kids that are in school, the parents should really discuss and agree to. And the teachers.
So they're also the people who haven't, the kids who haven't signed the permission letter, they're not getting tested either, right? They're not even in the lottery.
From the one, the parents who did.
So the whole idea of the DOE sending kids home, that was just a hollow threat.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that situation yet. What we do is we get the list the day before. We get told 2 days before. We get the list. We look through it. We basically then compare it to our ATS list of which parents have opted into doing to having testing, and then it's just a random selection.
Right.
15 students each time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like every other aspect of the American version of COVID testing, having the opt-in and the opt-out and the kids upset means it's
change often, which is why we have to run the report right before it starts. Yeah. Because it is a change, and we want to make sure that we're testing, and all the families have been called. So if you have the potential of today's the day and you are in cohort C and you have agreed, we're calling to let you know your child may be chosen. So to ensure that we have it. If we're unable to get in touch with that family, we don't choose the child.
okay.
When did they get the results back?
Yeah, I got mine back in less than 24 hours, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I took it today for the second time. The first time I took it, I felt like they were putting a stick into my brain. Now it's like, it really is pretty mild, easy. It's not really very bad. And, you know, I think people should tell their kids that this is manageable. It's not horrible. So listen, difference of opinion, respectful disagreement. That's what we talked about, right? So, any other questions or thoughts? Yes.
Mr. Labella, do you have anything to update, or?
I think Kathy had her hand up. So.
Oh.
I was just curious. I think as the last SLT meeting, Mr. Berman said that around 76% of kids had signed up for remote. If that had increased at all, or if you're seeing more kids opt back in, like, because isn't this weekend the end of the only opt-in period?
I don't think we saw any kids opt back
No,
in.
we had 3 opt-in.
Oh, 3? Okay.
We had 3 opt-in, 2 8th and 1 6th.
And is it, and have more opted for remote, or is it still around?
It's around 76%.
And have you, I was reading this morning that there's an expectation that the mayor might close schools before Thanksgiving. Has that been on?
Yes, I mean, honestly, we'll find out from the news. We're not going to find out through an email or anything like that. So, and it probably will be on a Friday at 2:20. Do I anticipate us closing? I could see it. Yeah, I could definitely see it. Thankfully, we already have a remote schedule that we used when we were closed 2 weeks for those 2 weeks. For the students who were blended, we kind of changed their schedule somewhat, so that if we do go remote, that's already been taken care of and planned for, so it will be seamless. So thankfully, I mean, I don't think it's thankfully, but since we did have to be remote those 2 weeks, it did kind of prepare us in the event that we have to go remote again. So we're ready if we have to. Hopefully we don't, but we're ready if we have to.
So Vito, anything? And then I think we're going to wrap it up and try to go home.
Yeah, so then just thank you to our new Vice President, Madeline. She helped us out with the Chatter Up. That's live now. I had some issues with the link was working when I sent it, and then I received it and it wasn't working. So if you got 3 emails, that's the reason why. I don't know how that works, but 8th grade stuff, I'm as frustrated as anybody especially for my 8th grade parents. I'm so sorry. The DOE is not telling us anything. They don't know. There's so many rumors out there. The same thing with our Screen Middle School, which kids are going to come into our school next year, how they're going to populate that school. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Next Tuesday, the same night as our PTO meeting, Assembly Member Matilda Frontis is holding a roundtable discussion. If this is something you care about, please go and sign up and speak your piece, whatever that is. She's certainly gaming she's stacking the deck. She's having a speaker who has spoken against the SHSAT and screens in the past. The topic is how comparing us to other states and the SHSAT and other states and specialized high schools. And, that's a slippery slope, right? I mean, we do know that other schools, Virginia, Boston Latin, and several others, that they have done away with the need for a test this year to populate the high schools next year. But unfortunately for them, or fortunately for us, we have a law in place, the Heck Calandra law, that the city cannot just do that without really having lawsuits challenging it, right? So if the governor tries to do it, there are already people that are involved in getting a lawsuit up right away. Unfortunately, it may be one of those things. It's a very difficult thing because it's called an Article 78 lawsuit, meaning there's this regulation in place. The city is not honoring the regulation. And well, the judge will say, okay, there's this situation in place and the city's not honoring it. Nothing I can do about it, right? So something similar happened with the funding, right? The state owes us how many billions of dollars? The court could say you have to pay. The state says we don't got the money, so they don't pay, right? So it would be one of those things where you'd spend tens and tens of thousands of dollars. You might even get a favorable judgment, but the city's gonna do what they want anyway. And there's really no recourse. So I know everybody's frustrated. This is a political, Adrienne Austin is a deputy chancellor. In a moment of candor in a meeting, she said, this is a political process. She got a lot of flack for that. It's 100% true. It's a political process. If they were to do away with screens and make it a lottery, if they do anything like that, our next step would be to try to take mayoral control, at least temporarily, from this mayor. We may have flipped some Democratic seats in District 20 and 21 to Republican, and some of the Democratic Assembly members that I've worked with, Peter Abadi, William Colton, he says he's fed up with the mayor and he would be willing to get some bipartisan support to take away mayoral control for at least a limited amount of time. So, I mean, this is all conjecture at this point, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. You know, I got another year for my daughter and Madeline's child too. So we are still, you know, we still have a little cushion, but my eighth graders, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're going through this. I wish I could help you.
All right, on that note, I think we'll see everyone next month. This was a very nice meeting, and if you have any suggestions or any thoughts, North Carolina or anything else, give us an email. We really like to hear about it, okay? Have a great day, everyone.